What's up? So we're going to chapter 2 of Junie B. First Grader Cheater Pants. I think we left off and maybe somebody looked at somebody else's paper so that they could get homework turned in. So now we are at chapter 2, Weekend Fun. You can't probably see that, but it's what it says. Where we left off, May went to the office, if you remember. So now she's about to get back. So, chapter 2, Weekend Fun. May got back from the office. She stood at the door and waved again. "I did it, everyone. I got the attendance sheet to the office, just like I promised." She took a look at Mr. Scary and said, "It went very well, too," she said. "There were no problems and I could handle it." Oh, there were no problems I couldn't handle. That's what she said. Mr. Scary raised his eyes from what he was doing. "Okay, well, thank you, May. You may take your seat now, please," he said. But May kept right on talking. "At first, I didn't know where to put it. But then the secretary told me to put it in the wire basket, so I followed her directions perfectly," she said. Mr. Scary pointed at her seat. "Excellent," he said. "Now please sit down, okay?" May didn't pay attention again. "When I was in kindergarten, I got an E+ for following directions," she said. "E+s are better than excellent. The plus sign means extra, extra excellent." Just then, Mr. Scary stood up, took May's hand, and walked her over to her seat. As soon as he went back to his desk, I strained my brain for something nice to say to her, because I was so happy at May for leaving her homework out. Finally, I tapped her on the arm, and I smiled. "Welcome back, madame," I said, friendly. May did a frown at me. "What kind of crack was that?" she said. I just looked at her. Friendly doesn't really come natural to us, I think. Pretty soon, Mr. Scary stood up at his desk. He walked to the board and he wrote these words. "This weekend, one thing I did for fun was..." "Okay, everyone," he said. "For your homework over the weekend, I asked you to complete this sentence. Remember?" Room 1 nodded. "Good, Mr. Scary. Good," said Mr. Scary, "because this morning I'd like for each of you to read your homework paper to the class. Now, that way we'll find out what our classmates do for enjoyment. Does that sound fun?" The room nodded again. "Even if it doesn't sound fun, you have to nod." Mr. Scary smiled. "Well, go up and down each row until everyone gets a turn." He pointed at Lucille. "Lucille, why don't you start us off?" he said. Lucille sits in the front row by the window. Last year, me and her were bestest friends, but this year we're just kind of regular friends. Lucille stood up and fluffed herself, and then she picked up her paper. She started to read. "This weekend, one thing I did for fun was my Richie Nana took me to her expensive beauty salon, and both of us got manicures and pedicures." Mr. Scary looked surprised at that news. "You got pedicures, Lucille? Wow, that's pretty fancy stuff, isn't it?" he said. Lucille shrugged. "For some people, maybe," she said. She looked down and kept on reading. "Also, we got a papaya fruit facial, and Nana got an herbal body wrap, plus I got a seaweed scalp massage." Mr. Scary stood there for a second and nodded very slowly. "Alrighty then," he said. After that, he pointed to Camille. Camille is the sister of Chanel. Those two are twin sets. Camille stood up. "This weekend, Chanel and I made a puppet theater out of a cardboard box. We put on a show for our brother Neil." Mr. Scary beamed at that news. "Oh, that's great, girls," he said. "I bet doing a puppet show for your brother was lots of fun, wasn't it?" "Not really," said Chanel. "Neil kept grabbing the puppets off our hands and made them kill each other." "We don't like Neil," Chanel said. "Neil's a boob," Camille said. A boob. Mr. Scary just stood there some more. Sorry, Mr. Scary just stood there some more. Then finally he moved to Roger. Roger was the best one so far. This weekend, one thing I did for fun was I went to get a pizza with my dad, and I ate the whole entire anchovy. And I didn't even throw it up until I was almost home. The room clapped. They clapped for the amazing story. Mr. Scary was right. It was fun to learn what our classmates did on the weekends. I couldn't wait for it to be my turn because I love to talk in front of the class. And of course, plus, because I love to talk, I can't wait for that to be my turn because I love to talk in front of the class, of course. Plus, all I had to do was tell about my weekend and Mr. Scary would think I did my homework. I put the paper I copied from May into my desk. I didn't need it after all because what do you know, today I lucked out. Ooh, it goes to chapter 3. Should we continue reading? I think we will. I think we're gonna step this up one more notch. Chapter 3, my friends. Twitching. What's gonna happen? I don't know. Finally, we got to the row right next to mine. That's where Jose and Lenny sit. Then Jose's turn came, and he smiled very proud. He said on Saturday his daddy bought him a brand new soccer shoes, and he wore them to his soccer game. He kicked the winning goal in those things. Lenny was next. He said he got a brand new hair gel, plus he also got a thickening cream. A thickening cream can make even the finest hair feel rich and full, he said. Whoa, I said. Whoa, said Herb and Jose. Whoa is what we say to be supportive. May sits behind Lenny. She stood up and read her paper aloud. This weekend, one thing I did for fun was on Saturday I made a pot in my pottery class. After that, I was punctual to my ballet class, and the teacher said I danced like a gazelle. Mr. Scary chuckled. A gazelle, huh? He said, a gazelle is a very graceful animal, isn't it? Yes. Would you like to see me do a few steps? May said. After that, she ran to the front room and she started to ballet. Mr. Scary said, please to sit down again. As soon as she got back, I jumped right up. My turn, my turn. I was thrilled. I tapped my chin. Okay, well, let's see now. On Saturday, my grandpa Frank Miller came to babysit me, and he let me roller skate in the house. Plus, also, he let me jump on Mom's bouncy bed, and pretty soon I got poops. So I ran into the kitchen, and I drank some chocolate milk right out of the carton, without even a glass, I mean. Whoa, said Herb. Whoa, said Lenny and Jose. Mr. Scary raised his hand to interrupt. Excuse me, Junie B., he said. It sounds like you had a great time on Saturday, but I'm wondering why you're not reading it from your homework paper. Just then, my heart got poundy and nervous, because I should have thought of that problem. I swallowed real hard. Gulp. Well, let's see. I said kind of quiet, why aren't I reading? Mr. Scary smiled. It's all right. You can start over. Just take the paper and read to us what you wrote. After that, I stood there frozen, and I couldn't even move. Mr. Scary crossed his arms at me. You do have a homework paper, don't you, Junie B.? He asked next. I stood there a little longer, and finally I reached into my desk and pulled out the homework I copied from May. I waved it in the air, kind of weakish. Here it is, I said, my homework paper. See it right here. He said. Mr. Scary nodded. Yes, good. Now, could you please read for us? Please. Now, he asked. I took a deep breath. I looked down at the paper, and I read it silently, just to myself. Okay, done, I said. After that, I quickly sat down, and I stuffed the paper back into my desk. Mr. Scary came back to where I was sitting. He said, could I please see... He asked if he could see my paper. I felt shaky and sickish inside. Very slowly, I took the paper out again and handed it over to him. He read it and shook his head. Then he took my hand and walked me into the hall. It seems that you and May had a very similar weekend, doesn't it, Junie B? He said. I did a gulp. Yes, it does. Mr. Scary read my paper once more. So you take a pottery class, do you? He said. I rocked back and forth on my feet. Yep, I do, I said. I take a pottery class and I make little, well, you know, pots. Mr. Scary took a deep breath. Let's see, you take a ballet class too, huh? He said. Gee, that's a coincidence. On Saturday your teacher said you danced like a gizzle, I said very fast. Gazelle, said Mr. Scary. Whatever, I said. My teacher sucked in his cheeks and looked at the paper again. You said you were punctual too. That's amazing, isn't it? I looked up at him. Well, you know, not if you get an early start, I said real soft, but Mr. Scary bent down next to me. His face was not jolly. Junie B, do you have any ideas how disappointed I am in you right now? Just then, tears came to my eyes. I didn't even expect that trouble. I quick hanged my head so he couldn't see. Sorry, I said. Sorry you're disappointed. Mr. Scary took a deep breath. He said we should talk more after recess. He gave me a tissue from his pocket and I wiped my tears. After that, we went back to the classroom. I sat on my desk very slumpy. 'Cause what do you know? I didn't look out after all. I'm going to keep reading. But I might send this to a different day. This is probably another day. Okay.